What's up, race fans? Thank you for joining us for the Italian GP Fantasy Preview. With me today, I have William Laddie, our principal software engineer and president of the Logan Sargeant fan club, and our director of business operations, Ryan Booth. Obviously, there's going to be a lot to talk about today. So I figure it's probably best we could just jump right into it. It's going to be the question on everyone's minds. What's going on with Logan Sargeant and Franco Colapinto? Um, Ryan, I feel like you might be prepared to talk on this topic.
I mean, I've only had about an hour to process the news. The big bomb dropped. Unfortunately, this has been something that has probably been coming for a while now, but still, it doesn't make it any easier to deal with. So it is definitely a time of mourning for the Logan Sargeant fan club. I don't really know what to say. It's sad. I think we're the go-to place for Logan Sargeant content. Funny enough, it started off last year as, we throwing my support behind the guy who finished P20 every single week because he was the lowest salary in our game, and I called him undervalued every week. And, cheer for America. I love America. And it really just kind of took off from there to the point where we would talk about him for maybe 5 to 10 minutes straight, and we'd still see comments on the YouTube chat asking questions. And I don't really know. We'll always have Austin 2023 F1 point scorer Logan Sargeant. Hopefully he'll be back at some point. Maybe he's going to India. Wherever he's going, we're going to follow. So I don't know what else to say. I'm sure there will be things that pop up throughout the show, but still really just coming to grips with it. And it is a really, really sad day today.
Mm-hmm. You'll get the same sentiment from me. Definitely sad to see the only American F1 driver no longer on the grid. But I definitely felt it during that qualifying crash last weekend. Like, it's the likelihood just rose to the level that we expected. And on the GridRival team, for everyone listening, we actually started pricing replacement drivers yesterday, kind of preparing for this moment, knowing that something might be coming. But we got a real curveball today with Franco Colapinto. We one of the only drivers we didn't price as a possible replacement for Sargeant yesterday, but we've got it all sorted out today. William, don't mean to put you on the spot, but do you want to tell people how this works in the app? What will happen with Logan? What will happen with Franco?
Sure thing, and most of it has happened already, actually. So first of all, we took down all the pick'em lines on Logan Sargeant, obviously, and if you had taken any, those are going to be voided, and you just get your. It's like that leg didn't exist. Like maybe you get your money back if you don't have a ticket anymore. Like if you still have a ticket, then you have a smaller ticket. But on the league side, which is probably what most of you are interested in, so what we did is we terminated all of the Logan Sargeant contracts, and you got a refund for his current value. And Colapinto should be up in the app shortly if he isn't there already. And you'll be free to sign him. There's no cooldown if you had Sargeant or anything like that. This is a brand new driver. And we have priced him at £4 million, which is going to put him basically on par with Joe. And for improvement point purposes, we're going to consider him as having finished 19th the last 8 races. This was just based on our feeling of where he stands compared to the grid, who we think he can realistically compete with, especially with some of the schedule coming up. Like this is a guy who's run like 1 or 2 practice sessions, and was not somebody who's been on everybody's radar, like say an Antonelli or a Lawson or somebody like that. So that was the decision. So the interesting question is, do you gamble on Colapinto? And I'm sure we'll have a lot to say in the chat and on the show today about whether you want to do that, because you would be taking a flyer. So that's what's going to happen. You're going to get your money back on Sargeant, and then you're free to sign Colapinto or anybody else.
Mm-hmm. And for anyone who had Sargeant and doesn't see their money back yet in their team value or bank, or anyone who doesn't see Colapinto yet, these replacements take a little bit of time to propagate. So just be patient, give it some time. It'll all show up. It's all there. This is a process that we run every single year. Someone's getting replaced. Just give it a moment and it'll sort itself out. So yeah, we can kind of jump into not really a race review of the Dutch GP, but kind of go right into the winners and losers. Ryan, I feel like you put together some thoughts here on biggest winners and biggest losers. So do you want to start us off with some of the biggest winners, drivers or teams coming out of the event?
Yeah, I think the biggest winner, I think pretty clearly this is like the obvious low hanging fruit, but I mean, Lando in that car he's probably unbeatable unless he makes a mistake. Unless Red Bull comes up with some sort of upgrade, I don't see anyone being faster than him. He even gets passed on the first lap like he always does because he doesn't know how to start a race. But it was just a matter of time before he's going to reel him in, and then he just left everybody in the dust. So I don't see, unless Logan.
You've got Logan.
Unless, this is going to be, apologies ever. This is going to be a really tough show today. There's going to be a lot of issues, and there are not going to be too many rational takes today. It's going to be a very emotional one. But yeah, Lando, I think, is just very clearly head and shoulders above everybody else on the grid. I will say it was surprising to see Piastri struggle a little bit, but we'll get to that with losers. Other winner, I mean, Logan Sargeant finished 16th. It's pretty good. Played the team game and finished 16th. So, and if we want to transition it into losers, I think all of us, we're all losers today for what has happened. And I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. My biggest loser for the second time this season, my biggest loser is James Vowles. Screw you, James Vowles, principal of Williams. I mean, the writing was on the wall when you stole his car in Australia in favor of the guy who wrecked it. I hope you don't finish a single race this year. I hope you have nothing but mechanical problems the rest of the season, Albon and Colapinto. And personally, I hope you openly favor Albon and Colapinto's expense, and then you get to see how his fan base reacts, because just look at, for those of you who don't follow IndyCar, have a look at what happened there with another driver from that nation and his fans. They're very passionate fans. We'll just say that they're very passionate fans. So that's the biggest loser. We'll get that out of the way. Anyway, Lando Norris. Let's go back to Norris as the winner. Here's the thing that everybody missed. He set fast lap on the final lap. He had beat up tires. Yes, he had light fuel, but he had used up tires, and he goes and sets fast lap.
Mm-hmm.
McLaren is clearly the best car.
Mm-hmm.
I think McLaren catches Red Bull in the constructor standings very, very soon.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe before our next month-long break that we've got coming up in a few weeks. Lando's the big winner. I think Mercedes we can count among the losers. I don't know what they were thinking with that extra pit stop. I don't know what they were thinking giving up that track position. I think that they could have done it. They could have both done at least one spot better than they ended up doing. So those are the thoughts that jump out at me.
Yeah. Also, to tack on to the Williams hate, another loser, Alex Albon. He is it's sad to see that Logan has to get replaced when Albon's out there being a dirty cheater, getting disqualified from qualifications. I don't know, just we got all sorts of issues today. So
yeah, I definitely feel like our potential Williams sponsorship is slipping out of our hands on this podcast today. I don't think we'll ever see GridRival endorsed by Williams Racing with our takes on Albon and handling of Sargeant. Something I want to remind all the players. Right now, Lando Norris is valued at $29 million. The base salary for first place fantasy rank, which Lando very well can reliably get at this point, is $33 million. So for anyone who has on their mind, is Lando overpriced, underpriced, or accurately priced. He's actually now could be easily said slightly underpriced, because you could see his value go up from 29 million to 30 million to 31 million. 32, 33 is probably out of the cards right now, but in terms of just a reminder, like the cap is not 30 million, it's 33. So there is some upwards movement on Lando. But I actually want to quickly switch gears to talent driver selections from the Dutch GP, because we were all big on Alonso, and that worked out well. That was good advice. He went up only $100,000, but was the second highest top point scorer out of the talent driver eligible drivers. But what we had said in the last podcast was you just can never tell when Alpine's going to show up. So Pierre Gasly, plus 2 million and the highest point scoring talent driver. So to everyone who took that gamble this past weekend, congratulations. That's the betting part of rolling Alpine on your lineup, especially as a talent driver. And when I talk about contrarian plays in like our previous shows, when you take a talent driver that no one else has, if it works out huge. This was that was exactly it. Gasly had a very low adoption rate. Among his adoption rate, his talent driver selection rate was low as well. So there you go. Everyone who did it won big and beat out everyone who had Alonso or Ricardo, Stroll, anyone else. So congrats to everyone there. And then on the losers side, Hamilton down 2 million. It's definitely something we got to talk about in our underpriced or overpriced category. Don't need to jump around too much, but I took our own advice, but I lean more heavily Russell than Hamilton. So I ran Russell in the majority of my lineups, and that worked out totally fine. But in my one lineup, I ran Hamilton. I also ran Williams, and I also ran Albon. So I got wrecked on that one. But yeah, what are we thinking about? I mean, we talked a lot about Mercedes in the last show. Were we right? Were we wrong? Were we erased too early?
I'm not hitting the panic button yet. I think this was a little bit flukier, and Zandvoort is sort of a unique track to where it's definitely twistier and bankier, and that did probably favor Ferrari a little bit more, where we saw Ferrari had a result. Red Bull was okay. Yeah, they looked a little bit more competitive. I think Monza is going to be better for Mercedes, if we do believe that they have the horsepower like over, say, Honda or Ferrari. Like, I'm not hitting the panic button over one race, though. I didn't see anything to where like clearly Red Bull is a mile above them or something. And I'm not sold on Ferrari yet either. That said, like Ferrari, like maybe they bring some special components for Monza since it is their home track, and they probably care about that a little bit more. So maybe Ferrari's a special this week, but yeah, I'm not panicking on Mercedes yet. I think we're gonna see them back on the podium really quick.
Yep, I agree. I think last week I've been pretty vocal about just running whichever Mercedes driver is cheaper because I view them pretty similarly. And I think obviously Russell was extremely undervalued he was fast, he was good, couple DQs, just value dropped way below. And, Hamilton was up at 28, Russell was down at 22. So I was going to run Russell, not touch Hamilton. Mercedes will figure it out. I'm not worried after their one maybe poor weekend after the first time in a while. And then going back to talent driver, I ran Albon as talent driver, which could have, if he didn't cheat, would have potentially been a huge point scoring endeavor. But unfortunately, it did not quite work out that way. I have him on my lineup for this week. I was going to run him as talent driver. If you would have asked me this question 2 hours ago, I would have told you we're running Logan, we're running Albon, we're running Williams, because I think Williams should be set up pretty well for Monza. But now I think out of principle, I might just drop all of them. Still got to figure that one out.
Yeah, certainly Albon's the only one that's viable of Williams and the other driver and Albon. Albon's the only one that's viable for Monza. They are a Mercedes-powered car, And if Mercedes is going to be better at a place like Monza where you're wide open a lot, then you potentially have a bargain there. Albon's on my roster now. I don't know if I'm going to keep him on my roster. I'll see if there's a better way I can go. That's also something I feel less dirty about. Uh, yeah, I had Albon last week as well. Not as talent driver. I had Alonso, but yeah, their floor was too wide in case they didn't have enough problems. And apparently they sandpapered it down to legality. I don't get it. I just don't get it. And I also don't know how that's not a pit lane start because you changed the spec.
Mm-hmm.
Like you changed it from a cheating spec to a legal spec. How's that not a pit lane start? Anyway,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, those are my thoughts.
Yeah, it was surprising. I think we all thought that it would be a pit lane start for Albon, and it ended up being a pit lane start for Magnussen. So
And we've seen that before, though. Like
yeah.
we've seen people caught cheating, and they wouldn't have to start on the pit lane, even though
Mm-hmm.
they theoretically had to change the car to make it legal again.
Yeah. Um. On we kind of touched on the undervalued, overvalued talent drivers. So getting into Monza, there's actually there's already a question in the chat that it's good to think about when we're thinking about Monza because of the schedule ahead. It says with the sprints coming soon, it would be good. With the sprints coming soon, it would be good if you could touch on forward planning for that. Is sacrificing a good team for drivers the best approach? So short answer to that is just like a quick summary of how points work is for sprints, the drivers get extra bonus points for their sprint finish position. So drivers will get an additional category of points. The teams do not. Specific for the sprint. So drivers can always outscore teams, but especially for sprints, drivers could outscore teams. So the strategy of going towards an expensive driver lineup versus trying to balance out with a expensive constructor is definitely a strategy to consider. But as always, it kind of depends on where you're at in your league, how much money do you have, are you kind of still needing a little bit more balance in your GridRival wallet so that you go for a Mercedes because you think they're going to gain value. So we could talk about some of those strategies. But William, you talked about the upcoming races and how you're thinking about them. Do you want to give everyone a refresher?
Yeah. So yeah, well, basically we can divide this up by that month-long break. Like we had a month-long break, we're gonna have another month-long break soon, unfortunately. So we've got Monza this week. We've talked about that. It's low downforce, high horsepower track. Then we have two street courses, Azerbaijan and Singapore, which are street courses, and very different beast. But so then we have the break on the other side. Here's your remaining schedule: Austin, Mexico, Brazil, Vegas, Qatar, Abu Dhabi. Austin, Austin, Brazil, and Qatar are all sprints. So races 1, 3, and 5 after that break on that final stretch. So if you wanted to, you could take somebody like Norris, Verstappen, like people who you think are going to do well in the sprint, lock them up for 5 races starting at Austin, and then you have them for the 3 sprint races, and you also have them to where they're going to produce the other weeks as well. Or maybe you have them already. You can maybe slot that cool down week to be Mexico or Vegas, where you don't have a sprint and you're not missing out on those points. So that's my thinking as far as lining things up the rest of the way, making sure that I have drivers who are going to be podium contenders for the sprints and figure out my contract lengths that way. So, and somebody asking about Italy and then 2 street courses. Do I want to go along Ferrari? That's actually a consideration. We'll see if Ferrari has anything up their sleeve for Italy, like I was getting at before. We'll see how practice looks on Friday. Ferrari won Monaco. Let's not forget that. They won Monaco. So they could perform on street courses, theoretically. That said, Monaco was an eternity ago. McLaren's gotten better. Mercedes has gotten better. In fact, McLaren won Miami. If we want to talk street courses, McLaren won Miami, and Ferrari wasn't really there. So that could be a play. Um, yeah, and then back half of the season, different story. Like you
Mhm.
only have the one street course on the back half of the season, and that is Vegas.
Mhm. Yeah, the advice I would give on contracts in general right now is like now is the time to be very specific about your contract length selections, because what tends to happen in the game in the back half of the season is there's always opportunities to gain value all the way through the second to last race like that. Those opportunities always present themselves, but it becomes a little bit less about value and more about just pure points performance. So you really want to make sure you're not paying unnecessary drop fees because you didn't plan. That would be the number one tip I would have. Like plan your contract lengths for planning for the sprints, for the additional driver points in however it makes sense for your lineups. But at the same time, just don't get yourself into a situation where you're paying unnecessary drop fees because if you have to drop, a blue chip driver like a Verstappen and Norris, Piastri, Leclerc, so that they're not locked out for the sprints, you're just burning close to £1 million of team value for that mistake. So my pro tip there would be really think about your contract lengths from this point on to get through the sprints, because you don't want to be paying unnecessary drop fees this late in the game. Cool. All right. I'm looking through questions here.
Yeah, actually, really quick, just to talk about kind of how I'm playing things moving forward. I have officially, I'm going aggressively towards points over value at this point of the season. I'm fortunate enough to have a pretty high team budget, and I will be I will be paying drop fees if I need to. I'm okay sacrificing some of my team budget to get as many points as possible. I'm in third place right now, trying to make up as much ground as I can, and I feel pretty comfortable making a lineup with 130 million pounds, or even if it's a little bit less. Um, so like looking at Max Verstappen at 29 million, if I'm looking at value, he might be the worst driver to roster at this point. But I'm considering like I will probably have him on my roster more weeks than not, just because I think he's still going to score a lot of points. I'm not going to get any value out of it, but like that's okay at this point in the game. I would not be running him if this was 6 or 7 weeks ago.
Yeah. Um, Mike just commented, just realized the game is priced in pounds, not dollars. You are all such globalists. It
If
actually drives us nuts too.
if you'd like to play a game that's denominated in dollars, we do have NASCAR leagues on our app as well, and those are in dollars.
Yeah, we've the pounds thing screws us up every once in a while too. It was an original design within the app, and we just haven't changed it. But we do want it to be dollars, but it is pounds. The F1 is a British sport, so they're running the team wallet.
Well, it was an American sport up until today. So I think I was using dollars on all the previous shows while Logan was a driver, but now I'm making the full switch over and using the terminology of pounds.
Yeah, we definitely say pounds and dollars interchangeably, probably much to the chagrin of our British fan base, or British player base. Uh, um, cool. Before we get into lineup reviews, is anyone dropping anyone from their lineups? Or is everyone running with what they've got? I could start. I'm not dropping anyone from my team. I had two contracts roll off after the Dutch GP to set up Monza and to set me up for new contract length selections for the upcoming sprint. So I'm not paying any drop fees. And for the choices I'm making right now are centered around team and lowest price driver. And I will say the most tempting person right now is Gasly, because I had about 17 million left for my lowest price driver. And I feel jealous that I didn't get in on the Gasly action for the Dutch GP. But I am looking at Mercedes for a short contract right now before the sprints, because I do believe that they have upside on the contract value. They're currently 22.6 million, and I think it should be a little bit higher than that. So I'm looking at Mercedes for potentially 1, 2, or 3 races, probably 2, but we'll see.
I guess I'll go next. So
I'm like having internet. Everything. I'm in total shambles.
Well, then, William, you could share your thoughts on lineup changes.
yeah, so right now I'm in a bit of a bind. I don't have a lot of team value because
Give me
I've been
1
wrong
second.
place, wrong time a lot this year. I do have Norris, Russell, Alonso, and Mercedes, and I don't think I'm dropping any of them. I've got Russell and Alonso rolling off in another week. Uh, I have 16.6 million to work with, and I have 2 drivers to fill. So my options are pretty limited, especially with Albon and Joe on cooldown for me.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I was gonna go Sargent, but James Vowles had other plans. So my options are like, I'm not dropping anybody. Like my options are like Magnussen, Botas, or God help me, Colapinto and Sonoda.
All right.
Just as soon as we make Colapinto appear in the app, which will be my priority as soon as we're off the air.
Yeah. All right. Well, as we wait for Ryan to potentially drop and rejoin the call, why don't we do some lineup reviews? So first one is from Felix. I have 65.3 million for 3 drivers. I already have Albon, Sonoda, and Mercedes. Russell, Gasly, and Norris are locked. Thanks, guys. Love the show every week. Love you too. Okay, so you're locked out of Norris and Russell. So that's putting you in a little bit of a bind at once. 65.3 locked out of Norris and Russell.
Okay, so the good news is Hamilton just took a dip.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've got that going for you. And maybe that's a shorter contract, depending on how much room you think there is to grow there. So, like Hamilton's
leaves-
one option I like.
Yeah, that leaves 38.5.
Alonso. Alonso's probably one of your best talent driver choices. You could go Alonso.
Yeah. We still got 21 left over with that.
So much money.
Yeah.
Uh,
You used to be able to get Perez, not anymore.
yeah. Yeah, he's actually gone and gotten his act together.
Yeah.
I mean, what you could do, you could actually go Hulkenberg and Checo if you actually think that he's not awful.
Mm-hmm.
I think that fits.
Yeah. We forgot about Piastri.
Yeah, you could go Piastri, who's $1 million more than Hamilton.
Yeah.
And then you're going to sacrifice on the other side of your lineup.
Yeah. I actually think I like that more. I think I would go Piastri for you. So starting at 65.3, go Piastri 27.8. That'll leave you 37.5. I agree. You have Gasly, but I think Gasly Alonso will probably give you the 2 best talent driver selections if Gasly shows up again. If not, it's Hulkenberg. It's someone right in that price bracket of around 15 million. So you still have 20.1 million left. So you'd be leaving a little bit of money on the table with this. But your lineup isn't bad. You just.
And like, given your cooldown drivers, I don't mind leaving a little money on the table if that lines you up to be able to re-sign Russell or Norris next week. Also consider that with your contract lengths. Maybe of those drivers we just threw out there, I don't know who you've got rolling off, but maybe we consider a 1 race contract just as a bridge to get back to Norris or Russell, who are both excellent choices.
You might also want to consider dropping Sonoda. That would free up some budget and probably be used better elsewhere, and then you could adjust a little bit more.
So then we're taking probably like Joe or Colapinto, because we still have to fill that spot.
Yeah.
And Colapinto, for those who didn't catch it at the start of the show, he's going to be $4 million. He's going to be priced the same as Joe, and he will appear on the app at some point today.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I think we've helped you as much as we could help you right now. We'll keep going. All 5 driver spots open, 124.5 million in the bank. That's a big ask. And then locked out of Lando, Lewis, Stroll, and Albon. But let's put a pin in that one. We're going to come back to you, Logan, on that. That's a lot of work. We're going to do that when we have some time. Join the Discord and post that. And we can help out a little bit more on there. Um, da, 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 da. Ryan, Liam's blaming you for leaving last week for Logan being canned. In case you missed that.
That's probably not wrong. Yeah, I leave for 1 week and all hell breaks loose. Like, I leave for 1 week. Logan's gone. My internet has completely turned into a dumpster fire. Like, everything is just really bad right now. There's nothing is going correctly. I don't even know. Our pets' heads are falling off. The sky is falling. Like, that's how I feel right now.
All right. Well, Jamming Out has 46 million for 2 drivers and a constructor. Already has Russell, Norris, Piastri, very good. Alonso, Albon, Williams locked out for this week. Any wreck on talent driver or constructor. On the constructor side, I would personally say, definitely keep an eye on Mercedes, because I still believe that there is contract value benefit and good points to come out of that. Probably like one of the better of like the top 4 teams in terms of like getting contract value and points combined from Mercedes. So I would go Mercedes there. If you're locked out of Alonso, I mean, you're kind of looking at the best of the rest, and just the dark horse, I keep saying it's going to be Alpine. Is like, if they show up, they do well. But if you want a safer bet, I never mind going with like Ricardo or Hulkenberg.
With this being Monza, we could also think about Lance Stroll. He is unlikely to beat his teammate, but he does have the Mercedes. If we think the Mercedes is the power unit to have, then he's the one Mercedes-powered driver who's really an option for you, a talent driver, because the other ones are either on lockout or they're Colapinto.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not trusting him.
Actually
he's had like 2 practice sessions.
Yeah, an actual serious Williams take is that Albon is my favorite talent driver this week. I think this track sets up well for him. He is cheap, and he's going to score a lot of teammate points over Clownapinto. So
yes, when
I
he
think that he's.
Did you say his name correctly or something else?
I think the pronunciation key, I got it off Wikipedia, so I think it's right, but I guess you can never trust it. Never cite
AI
Wikipedia
so.
as a source.
The AI said so. AI is not wrong.
All right. We think we helped that person out enough. Schweck says, are you still bringing the guaranteed price pool contest back for Monza this week? Unfortunately not. I'm not going to blame it entirely on Google Play, but it's not Google Play's fault in terms of like distracting us as a team from being able to bring those back. So if anyone on the call works for the Google Play team, email us, support@gridrival.com. We could use your help. It's a constant struggle. So sorry, Schweck. We want to bring those back as soon as possible. But we're dealing with some competing priorities at the moment. Logan is basically Tim Tebow at this point. I'm not a ball and stick.
I'm a Bronco
guy.
fan.
Okay,
I'm a Bronco fan. Let's have some words here. Okay, Tim Tebow was overrated as a quarterback, I've got to say. I mean, they made that run that year because of the kicker mostly, and not Tim Tebow. But yeah, I could see where you're making that comparison.
It's not the best comparison.
I like Sargeant better.
It's not the best comparison because Tim Tebow was always overrated. Logan Sargeant always underrated. The only thing they have in common is that they're both like total legends. That's really about it.
Yeah, and one of them never refused to play tight ends.
That's true. I did not have Tim Tebow coming up on the show on the bingo card, but
yeah,
here we are. It's a weird day.
Yeah. All right. Well, we got a quick one from Nick Morrell. Then Mike, we'll go back to you about the next upcoming track. Says, love you all and appreciate all the hard work you guys put into this. Thank you for playing. Love you too. Just wanted to ask a quick question. I can see the top 100 in the world on the app and my rank, but not the total entries. Can you guys add or change the format of that screen so I can see how many total people make up the leaderboard? We don't publish the number of total players in the game for a variety of reasons, but the number that we put out there is that there's about 100,000 active lineups within the game right now. So, if you are ranked 15,000, that's 15,000 out of 100,000, basically, roughly. It's not exact, but so we won't be putting that number out anytime soon, like the exact numbers and things like that. But yeah, I hope you're doing well in your on the global leaderboard.
Also, a good way to get us to respond to your question is by starting it off with a compliment to all of us. So thank you for that. And we're much more likely to read those ones.
And if you want to give us a compliment with the algorithm, hit that like button if you're watching us on YouTube, and tell the algorithm that you like us.
Yes. Yeah.
That was a wonderful segue.
And subscribe to the channel and leave us an app review on Google Play or iOS App Store. That's what helps us stay online and stay in business. All right. So can you walk through this, Mike? Can you walk through how the next 3 tracks set up in terms of favoring certain teams? In general, I find that the hardest info to come by and the most valuable context. It is a good question. One caveat that I'll give is that sometimes track layouts change from year to year, and even small changes make for big impacts, like especially when it comes to like track limits and them extending tracks. So if you're trying to make decisions based on tracks, you also want to stay up to date on like, are there any track changes for this year versus last year? Because those actually do make some pretty big differences. Answering it myself, I look at it as a generality, like, is it a long fast circuit? Is it or slow tight circuit? And I'll make some adjustments based on that. But a lot of that comes out in the practice sessions. You see who's where in the practice sessions. You see who's close to their teammate, who's far from their teammate. So that's how I kind of look at it. Ryan, William, you guys got anything on how you look at the tracks coming up?
So I would say, Monza is sort of a special track. We've discussed that a little bit, where very flat out, very low downforce at that track. So you're going to favor the cars that have little drag and have lots of horsepower. And with qualifying, you're going to want to favor teams where like both drivers are pretty good and can give each other a tow, as opposed to the team where one guy is going to get knocked out of Q1 and the other guy is going to be all by himself later on, and maybe not able to get that tow and qualify up the grid. So that's my thought about Monza. That is a pretty unique track. Baku and Singapore, especially Singapore, street circuits, they're going to favor drivers who can execute with few mistakes, and also going to favor teams that are a bit better on the twistier tracks, the tracks where downforce is more of a thing. And it seems like any track's going to favor McLaren these days. But
yeah,
like looking at what happened at Zandvoort, for example, where again, like downforce is a thing that matters. Maybe those street circuits won't be so great for Mercedes, but again, like we won't really know until we have practice times, because upgrades are a thing too. Like we still see upgrades. Probably this next month or so is the last upgrades we'll see for most of these teams. Teams that are in a fight like McLaren and Red Bull, like I think they are going to have to continue improving the car as they fight for the Constructors' Championship. Mm-hmm. But like Ferrari, Mercedes, they're fairly locked into place. Mm-hmm. And you may not see as much from them as we finish the year, unless it's stuff they're looking at for 2025.
Yeah, and take this strategy with a little bit of a grain of salt, because it is pretty specific to where I am in my league, and I think some of you might be in this position as well. But with a large team budget, trying to make up some points, and it's all priority points right now, I'm willing to pay for them. So I'm taking longer contracts and okay with paying a drop fee, because the last thing I want is someone to look very good on a track and I'm locked out of them, losing out on those points. So hopefully my strategy works well enough where I'm not paying too many drop fees, but I would much rather pay $1 million here or there, 500,000 here or there, get the guys who are going to score the most points, look the best in practice, than be like, oh, I can't use this guy. I'm locked out. I'm going to miss out on whatever this is. Because I, at this point, don't care a ton about my team value. It might be a little early to switch to that, but I'm in the point where I need to make up some points and I have the team value to do it. So that's what I'm doing. So anyone else in that position, I think that's the way to go.
Yeah, we have a differing strategy on paying contract termination fees right now. I'm trying to avoid it at all costs to protect my my war chest. But yeah, it's a good point. I mean, it does show that there's different ways to play the game and still stay competitive. Because I think, Ryan, you're probably in the top 200 global players, right? In the league that we're in.
I actually need to check. I have like 134, I think, team value. I'm about a couple hundred points behind you. So that's part of it too, is that you want to keep your value up because you're trying to defend a lead. I'm trying to, like, I need to be a little more aggressive. So
yeah, and William is absolutely spanking me in the other league that him and I are in, that William and I will never talk about or acknowledge exists, but neither of us will give up setting a lineup in that test league every single week.
We're both too stubborn. A random test league we created at the beginning of the season, and if I'm going to set a lineup, I'm going to keep setting lineups.
William and I have never spoken about this league until now.
I really, really wish that I would have been using those lineups in the league I actually care about, because that league that's a heck of a lot better than the situation I got going in our company league, which like I'm sitting here and going into Monza with like 108 and change of team value. Just because I've been burned so many times. I got burned by Albon last week. I got burned by Russell the week before that. Like, if I sign them, they probably retire from the race.
it's like the old fantasy football joke. It's like, I know I'm in last place, but I'm winning my other league.
Yeah, no kidding. Fantasy football. Last year, I took Aaron Rodgers as my quarterback, and those of you who follow football know how calamitous that ended up being. He got hurt and missed the entire season, 4 plays into the season. That's my luck.
Yeah.
The Jets' luck.
All right, let's try and power through a few of these because we got 15 minutes left or something like that, and we've got a couple to go. So I think we're on Jack Westbrook. I have 43.1 million to work with. I have Hamilton, Sonoda, Hulkenberg, and Albon. I have Piastri and Racing Bulls locked out. Looking for value. Thanks, guys. Of course, you're welcome. So 43.1. You have Hamilton, Sonoda, Hulk, Albon. So you need one driver, one constructor. Is what I'm getting out of here. That's the sound of it. Racing Bulls is locked out. That's no problem. Let me look at it again. You have Hamilton, Sonoda. You need another top driver. You only have one. You only have one podium contender with Hamilton. I would like you to have one more. So I'm going to prioritize that.
Yeah, and I would go by what does practice look like. If Ferrari somehow looks good, and Leclerc and Sainz are there, and would be at a discount, again, if we're looking at one race, potentially, like if Ferrari has like a Monza special situation. Otherwise, like you're probably looking at Norris and whoever you can fit after you pay for Norris.
The Alpine, right? Norris and Alpine.
Alpine, if they're decent at Monza, like I don't know that they have the horsepower.
Yeah,
Haas. Like Alpine Haas. That's who's in that range. Because I'm not touching.
Yeah, you're looking at
not touching Kick, and Racing Bulls is locked for him. Otherwise, it'd probably be Racing
we're
Bulls.
talking constructor. I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, we're talking like constructor driver combo. You could do Russell, Aston Martin. If Aston Martin because Aston's running the Mercedes powertrain, if they're looking good in practice, it might not be like a tremendous value thing because they're not going to beat Mercedes. But in terms of like just getting points from there and possibly protecting that value, you could do a short contract on Aston and pair it with Russell and bank on more contract value with Russell.
Yeah,
that's not a bad move.
That's I thought it was two drivers for some reason, but yeah, I really like that pair. If assuming we don't have any surprises in practice, if we do have surprises in practice, I might go something more like Norris and Haas.
All right, let's go to the next one. 40.1 million for two drivers. Did we just do this? A similar number. 40.1 million for two drivers. Locked out of Russell and Alonso. I have Norris, Piastri, Albon already. So you have Norris, Piastri. So you're good on the top drivers. If Albon's your talent driver, do you have a constructor, Joshua Lynn? Do you have a constructor? Because you said you have 40.1 million for two drivers. There's no comment on your constructor situation.
I assume they have a constructor and they're happy.
I would assume so.
So, okay, 40 with the drivers that we saying you have the two McLaren drivers.
Mhm.
You have who may be one of the better talent drivers this week. How do we spend the remaining 40? So even with you having Albon, like Alonso is a consideration anyway.
He's locked out of Russell and Alonso. That's the problem.
Stupid me.
Yeah. That was my first go-to. He hit 40.1 million is perfect for Alonso Russell, he's locked out.
If Ferrari looks okay on Friday, I would consider like Sainz and maybe like Hulkenberg or Stroll. Not as long-term arrangements or anything. But like those are people I want to see how they do in practice. If Ferrari can even, they don't even have to look like winners. If Ferrari can just outperform where they're ranked now, you're going to pick up some funds and parlay that into something better in future races.
Yeah, for 40 million, I'll throw out a weird pairing. Again, points focused pairing. Max and Magnussen. I think Max still scores well. He's definitely not as good as Lando, but you already have Lando. I think if you roster Max, I believe he said he has Piastri already, so that's probably the top three guys. So I think you're going to finish 1, 2, 3, and I think Magnussen's not great, but for under 10 million, I think that's not really. You could do a lot worse with under 10 million.
I agree. That's a good one. And then the only one I'll say, then we can move to the next one, is if Alpine's looking good in practice, you could go Ocon, Hamilton. And then if you have Hamilton, Norris, Piastri, that feels pretty good for your top drivers. All right, we'll move to the next one here. Smaller numbers. Thank you. 28.9 million available for two drivers. On my team, Norris, Russell, Albon, Mercedes, locked out of Hulk and Yuki. All right, no big deal there. So you have, if you're set on running Albon for talent driver, which you didn't comment on, 28.9, you're okay. 28.9. Norris and you have Norris and Russell, Albon, locked out of Hulk and Yuki.
You could swing Sainz and then one of our 4 million guys. Either Zhou or Colapinto.
Yeah. You could do that, or you could split two mid packers. You could do like an Alonso Ocon if Ocon looks good in practice, or like Alonso Magnussen if depending on just who looks good at the bottom of the pack is basically where I would make that decision. Like how much are you willing to spend on the bottom of the pack? Are you just going to go for a Zhou or a Colapinto and then go high driver, or try and split the difference with two mid packers that might place 9th, 10th, 11th?
I will say if you're between, because they'll be the same price, Zhou or Colapinto, I think you go with the Williams guy, because I think we know Zhou stinks. Like we know he's bad, we know he's slow. I will take the unknown over something that we know is bad.
And the car
he's in a better
better.
car, a much better car, especially at this track. So I think that I don't think Zhou should touch anybody's roster this week. If you need someone cheap, Colapinto is the guy.
Yeah. Okay. I lost my place in the chat.
I hope he enjoys these 9 races or whatever it is, because this feels like it dead ends for him. Because both the Williams seats are taken next year. At least next year, probably more than next year.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, next lineup.
We've got actually two non-lineups, but it'll be thinking double on Albon with the rookie may be nice from Grayson Holter. It is yes, because of the teammate points. Like if Colapinto is a rookie and performs as a rookie and doesn't show up like Behrman or Lawson did on their first showings and is at the back of the pack, and Albon places 11th, 12th, 13th, yeah, there's going to be teammate points there. making Albon potentially a little bit more attractive. But again, I got to defend Ryan here. If you sign Albon and star Albon, you are supporting Williams Racing, and we're not supporting.
Yeah, that's my problem, because if Albon looks how I expect him to look in practice, I think he's easily the best talent driver selection, especially for the price. I just don't know if I can bring myself to do it.
Yeah, agreed. Thoughts on dropping Yuki? I'm a yes on that. I think I looked at his salary chart earlier on the call, and I think it's just been, yeah, he's. If you look at the salary chart on him, he's basically where he started at the start of the season. So all of the value has kind of gone up, teeter-tottered, and come back down. Honestly, I haven't been keeping close eyes on Yuki and what's been going on, but
That team has collectively been a disappointment. It's not just a Yuki problem.
yeah. Missed the beginning of the show. Apologies. Did you cover what lengths you're looking at for contracts? We did. Listen to the beginning of the call or join our Discord and ask again, and people will be happy to repeat what we said. 36 million for 2 drivers. Have Norris, Alonso, Hulk, Mercedes locked, Russell, and Albon. Well, 36 million for 2 drivers is a good problem to have. If you're gonna, I'm assuming you're running Alonso for talent driver. You've got, yeah, you need one more guy at the top. Have Norris. Basically, you're going to be a Verstappen, a Piastri, a Leclerc, Hamilton, and then with the money you have left over, you're picking up someone from the bottom. Is how I would play that move. So depending on who you pick at the top, basically forces your hand on who you're going to pick at the bottom. So yeah, that's what I would say there. You guys got anything on that one?
Nah, it sounds good.
Yeah, I'm going the same way.
Yep. You guys see any questions? I keep losing my spot in the chat. Worth dropping Hamilton to pick up Russell instead being cheaper?
No, the
Yeah.
gap's not nearly enough.
Unless you have something that you really need, like if you really have an upgrade somewhere that you can use those 3 or 4 million for, then go ahead. But again, don't drop anyone until after we see practice. Wait to see how these guys look, because you never know what's going to happen. So don't do any drops until I don't drop anyone until after FP3. So
yeah, I'm gonna skip around. I'm gonna Brit Dude 17. I'm skipping around because of this person did follow the directions. Amazing app. Love your show. Liked, subscribed, donated 20K to your kid's education. Renamed my kid GridRival. 89.9 million left. Need 4 drivers. 89. So this is a big one, but we're gonna do it. 89.9. I'm not gonna let you down. Don't worry, everyone else. We'll do our best to get to you. But
in an hour.
In 5 minutes. Hit us up on Discord. There's lots of help going on in Discord. 89.9 left. Need 4 drivers. Locked Russell, Alonso, Hulk, Lando. Russell, Alonso, Hulk, Lando. Okay, that's not a big deal.
The big guys up top, Max and Oscar.
Yep.
Depending on if you're looking for points, I think those 2 need to make it into your lineup. This math is too much for me today.
32.9 left with Verstappen and Piastri signed. I agree with that.
Man, like we're gonna need a talent driver. Well, maybe Albon's your talent driver. But how much money did we have left
giving
again?
you my lineup.
Yeah.
How much money did we have after Max and Oscar?
We got 32.9 left. If we take Albon, who's only 11.6, that's 21.3 left. So the last driver, you could go back towards the top, or you're just going to be leaving some contract value down, which is fine.
You could give me Leclerc and the clown.
That's fair.
It sounds like Leclerc, we haven't seen practice times. Like Leclerc could podium. Like Leclerc podiumed last week. Leclerc could podium again.
Yeah.
Or like the thing is, like with you having Alonso and Hulk both unavailable, I have a hard time finding like a couple of good midfielders to round it out.
Hmm.
Like we don't quite have enough to do like sign Stroll or something. But yeah, like I have a hard time finding midfielders that I'd pair with a decent enough driver. Uh, yeah, so I think you gotta look that way.
Yeah. Okay. That's some advice there. Anthrox signed onto the chat late. We aren't doing the 200 player daily lineup this week. We are not. If anyone here is a Google Play employee, email support at gridrival.com. And we can work on that problem again. All right. I think we can do one more and then we could sign off, maybe two more. 41.8 in the bank. I have Norris, Russell, Hulk. Need two drivers, one constructor. Can't have Sonoda, Ocon, or Alpine. So 41.8. You have Norris and Russell, so you're good there. Hulk, yeah, could be a dicey talent driver. He's fine for a talent driver, but let's see. You have 41.8 left.
Yeah, and whatever we tell you today, there are so many drivers in that kind of range that are all about the same price. Take whoever looks best in practice. That's probably going to be the right answer to the talent driver equation.
Mm-hmm.
So we can give you kind of like between that 12 and 15, whether you can like however much you can afford, but it's really going to come down to who looks the best.
And
And
you're
I'm going
one,
to use that data over what we say on a Tuesday.
and you do have the one twist as you're analyzing this week. How does Albon look compared to his teammate? Because if his teammate looks terrible, then you potentially have a premium teammate point spot there. Just throwing that there. And if the clown actually seems to know what he's doing, for improvement point purposes, we are ranking him 19th right now. So if he's looking like a 10th place car somehow, then hell is frozen over, and you potentially have a premium spot to pick up points there.
It's going to be a tough look for the fan club if he looks really good in that car. I'll say that right now. We're going to have to do some serious PR spin next week because even though he's gone, the fan club still does live on. And I am seeing some comments in the chat, like Liam, Mike, Andrew. Like, thanks for the support. Yeah, I mean, you guys in the chat. That's what makes this. That's what makes this fun. So that's why the Logan Sargeant fan club took off.
I'm going to make the bull case for real quick. I'm going to make the bull case for Colapinto. Let's go. So we've had so looking back at full-time American F1 drivers who have been dropped. I'm not counting Rossi because that was like 5 races at the end of the year. So we had Scott Speed. He was dropped in favor of Sebastian Vettel. How'd he end up? And before that, you have to go back to 93. You had Michael Andretti, and he got dropped in favor of Mika Hakkinen. How did that end up? There's your bull case for Colapinto. I don't think history is going to repeat itself, but I just have to put that out there.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Your ability to pull out those nuggets is second to none. I think people think you like have Google up, but you could hear William's keyboard. He's not typing.
I did have to confirm myself that it was Vettel that replaced Speed and there was nobody between them.
Okay.
But I distinctly remember that Hakkinen had replaced Andretti, one of the Finnish world champions over the years.
Mm-hmm. All right. So we are in overtime right now. We do have to get back to doing our jobs and get Colapinto up in the app. For anyone's questions we didn't get to, I implore you, copy your questions, put them into Discord. The conversation tends to move there after our show. So move those over there and we'll try and move through them quicker next time. But thanks everyone for signing on to the Monza GP preview. Thanks for everyone for supporting us. Remember, subscribe to the channel, like the video, leave us an app review, play daily fantasy if you're in the US and are allowed to play. Do all the things to support us, and we will continue to support you. That's all I got for now. Have a great race weekend, everyone.
Logan Sargeant forever.